Hello everyone, salam, namaste, and welcome to today's event. Today's event is on foreign policy, diplomacy, and about how to think and talk about South Asian prosperity. So the topic is South Asia Shared Prosperity, Key to Peace and Progress. The speaker today is a former ambassador of India to UAE, Saudi Arabia, and Brazil, Ambassador Ishrat Aziz. He has been here as a Consul General of India in San Francisco and a diplomat in Iraq, Morocco, and Beirut. A detailed introduction will be given by Dr. Ray Abdullah, who is a very well-known personality in the local Washington metro area. He is the founder of Aligarh Alumni Association, a scientist, a statistician, and an Alig. And the concluding remark will be given by our Tariq Farooqi Saab, who is also a senior member of the Aligarh Alumni Association, local here in the Washington, D.C. area. All three speakers happen to be Aligarh student. At one point, two of them were teachers also at Aligarh. Even I am coincidentally an Aligarhian, so most of people here at this point happen to be from Aligarh. So let's start. So I invite Dr. Abdullah for the brief introduction.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Azizuddin. Really, I feel challenged to introduce Ambassador Ishrat Aziz, who has a lot of accomplishment and has fine human values. And I have known him since my childhood. And I have few minutes. So I will cut all my personal relationship, go straight to Aligarh, from where he got bachelor's and master's and became lecturer in Department of English before he got selected in the prestigious Indian Foreign Service. And as you mentioned, posted as a diplomat. He served on various positions, starting from secretary to ambassadorships in many countries of Middle East, including Iraq, Morocco, Lebanon, UAE, Saudi Arabia, and as you mentioned, he was also Consul General here in United States and San Francisco, and Ambassador of Brazil. And I remember he also led certain task force dealing with Pakistan. So he is not only familiar or knowledgeable about the South Asian countries, but also about the Middle East, and with whom the South Asian countries had a lot of economic ties. And over the years, I have many occasions discussions with him on variety of subjects, starting from, say, Quran to Aligarh Alumni Associations. And I have always found him very rational, pragmatic, and his conclusion is always based on facts and not on fiction, on fantasy. So the person who understands the diplomacy, knows the region, is the right person really to talk about the subject today, South Asia, shared prosperity, key to peace and progress. If I have to redefine this, subject in my mathematical language, I will say that the countries, each country of the South Asian region will progress or see peace and prosperity if and only if the entire region is prosperous. And when we talk about region, I think here we mean a geographical region, not a political entity, because geographical region, generally the countries belonging to that, they share not only the border, but they also share the natural resources. And this is the management of the shared natural resources is actually the key to the prosperity and the peace and the other thing they follow from there. So this topic is very important. And I had suggested Dr. Azizuddin earlier that maybe you should continue to have this topic each month until you have collected 7, 8 such talks, and then it should be compiled in a book form and publicized, and that will be a contribution of this forum really to educate because people have to be emphasized over and over again about the old village saying that you are not safe if your neighbor is hungry. So I think I will stop here and invite Ambassador Ishrat Aziz, whom I have always addressed as Ishrat Bhai. So Ishrat Bhai, floor is yours.
Well, thank you, Abdullah, for that very warm introduction. And also, I'm sorry, not being well versed in handling laptop and Zoom, I delayed things by 5-10 minutes. The subject has always been very dear to me because of various reasons, which when I make my remarks, you will know. I first got the idea of shared prosperity, I must tell you, in 1965, because in 1965, a war was going on between India and Pakistan, and I had to prepare a paper for discussion, and the paper was on European Common Market, as it was then called. And when I read about it, I realized that the idea of a common market and shared prosperity is the key to peace and prosperity in any region. And peace and prosperity are essential for the people to unite. Now, my remarks will be very detailed, but let me just say that I have emphasized the total size of the population, because the people do not realize, without comparison, how huge the population of South Asia is. And the future of those people depends on what happens, what is the kind of relationship that exists between the countries of the region, particularly the 3 countries of the subcontinent. And to me, this is my basic thinking. This has been my observation, that self-interest is the key to unity. 80% of self-interest is economic prosperity. If self-interest unites, religion cannot divide. And if self-interest divides, then religion cannot unite. This is to my mind, the key to unity and peace in the region. I also I have emphasized in the paper the role of intellectuals, because remember, politicians will not speak the truth, because if they speak the truth, they will lose elections. So they keep quiet, they don't tell the facts to the people, and only intellectuals who do not depend on elections for their career can tell the truth. And with these brief remarks, let me go into the details of my paper. Let me start by saying, let me put things in perspective by saying that South Asia is the Pacific Ocean of population. Crowded by 1.8 billion people, India 1.4 billion, Pakistan 230 million, Bangladesh 170 million. The population of the subcontinent exceeds that of China by 400 million. It exceeds the combined population of Europe, 446 million, North America, 360 76 million, South America 450 million, by 500 million people. You put all these three continents together, they are still short of 500 million as far as the population of South Asia is concerned. It also exceeds the population of the second largest continent, by the way, Africa, whose population is about 1.4 billion, while South Asia is 1.8 billion. Now, the important thing is that these 1.8 billion people live on a land area of only about 1.7 million square miles, which is, by the way, less than half the area of United States or Canada or China. And it is 1/4 of the area of Russia. So you can imagine how crowded the subcontinent is. Let us look at the demographics further. This population consists of 1 billion Hindus, 600 million Muslims, and 200 million others, including Christians, Sikhs, and people of other faiths. It may be underlined that the population of Muslims in the subcontinent, and that gives you a sense of perspective, is more than the population of United States and Indonesia combined, the third and fourth largest countries in the world. This is also, the population of Muslims in the subcontinent is also more than the entire population of the Arab world, extending from Iraq to Morocco. Such a large population crowding so small a land area creates problems. Relative to the population on the subcontinent, the subcontinent has lowest forest cover of any major country in the world. For balanced ecology and forest, the forest area should be about 33%. India's forest area is only about 20%, and that of Pakistan and Bangladesh significantly less. If I am to believe these statistics, Pakistan's forest area is only about 6%. Inadequate forest area has adverse impact on climate, soil erosion, floods, etc. The subcontinent does not have enough water for the size of its population. This problem is aggravated by the uneven distribution of water geographically and seasonally. This problem is aggravated by the uneven distribution of water. There are places with abundant water, but large areas have very limited rainfall. Similarly, in rainy season, there is deluge for 3 months or so, and then for the rest of the year, very little rainfall. By the way, I may assure you that I will not take more than the allotted time, perhaps much less. The underground water table has fallen alarmingly in the last 50 years, and even posh colonies, and I can speak for Delhi, face water shortage. A large number of people are deprived of adequate water for various needs. The subcontinent is also relatively short of natural resources like oil, gas, copper, etc. One significant but very often overlooked geographical reality is the flow of rivers. This is important. We all know about the rivers flowing from India to Pakistan in the west and to Bangladesh in the east. What is often not realized is that these and many other rivers that flow into the subcontinent have their origin in Tibet, which, by the way, is a part of China. One fact needs careful study. About 800 million people of the subcontinent live in the area extending from Punjab to Assam. Much of the water that the river system supply to this area in summer is from melting glaciers in the Himalayas and Tibet. What would happen if the glaciers in Himalayas and Tibet melt significantly due to global warming affecting water flows to the subcontinent? It can well be imagined. A very important and unique geographical reality. This also is very noteworthy. 3 neighboring countries in the region, China, India, and Pakistan, with more than 3 billion people, have common borders, difficult relations, and territorial disputes, and all the 3 have nuclear arsenals. Nowhere else in the world does such a situation exist. The population of the subcontinent plus that of China is 40% of the world's total. So whatever happens in the region, 40% of the world's population is affected. Now, in this given scenario, the role of the intellectuals. In trying to popularize the idea of shared prosperity, we must understand the problems. Politicians, with rare exceptions, exploit existing sentiments to win elections. They appeal to gut public emotions, not put forward complicated intellectual concepts which take time to sink in. It is here that intellectuals have their tasks cut out for them. Immune to elections for their career prospects, they can tell the public what is good for them in the long run, not what is presently popular. They can avoid populism. They can educate public on the nature of today's world and its requirements. Now, this is important. Industrial economy, which is key to prosperity and welfare today, is highly interdependent. Agricultural economy can be local, but industrial economy has to be global. Industrial economy requires a very large common market. The raw materials that go into the making of industrial products have to come from different places of the world, and the mass scale industrial products have to be marketed globally. Just think of any product, how many things go into making it from different parts of the world, and then where all it has to be sold globally. Trade and flow of goods, services, finance, and manpower are key to prosperity in today's world. Attempt at autarkic self-sufficiency is the road to economic stagnation. Self-sufficiency was a very popular concept at one time, but it doesn't work. The key is an efficient, now self-sufficiency really is through an efficient and competitive economy which can sell and buy whatever it needs. Japan, Germany, Korea, Taiwan are examples. This is the right approach to economic self-sufficiency in an interdependent world, not the mirage of producing everything in the country. Buyers and sellers have a mutuality of interest in maintaining trade and peace. There are a number of prerequisites for an efficient economy. It's all right to talk of an efficient economy, but there are certain prerequisites. Efficiency of an economy depends on social peace and political stability, which requires justice, equal human rights, and rule of law. Force cannot achieve it on a sustainable basis. You can't keep people united by force. To tap all talent, the society wherever it is, to tap all talent within the society, wherever it is, horizontally or vertically, equality is essential. To compete internationally, the goal of a society must be no talent left behind. Talent is the most precious resource of a nation, and it is scattered in a society, fortunately, without considerations of caste, creed, color, faith, or wealth. Tapping the talent handicapped by poverty is the most challenging task in every society. Now, this is the role of the intellectuals. Attempt must be made to show that real enlightened self-interest does not have to be sacrificed by any identity for the unity of the society. The distinction, now this is very important, the distinction between self-interest and selfish interest must be explained by intellectuals. The former, that is self-interest, takes into account the interest of others. The latter, that is selfish interest, does not. By accommodating the self-interest of others, a nation makes larger long-term gains. For example, by giving any territorial claims to the east of Oder-Neisse River, Germany made huge gains. This atoned for its past aggressiveness, thus clearing the way for German unity, peace, prosperity, and global influence. Self-interest is a win-win approach because both sides gain. Selfish interest is a zero-sum game because one wants to gain at the expense of the other. A little accommodation to the sentiments of the neighbor, whether by an individual or a country, yields big gains. True national interest needs to be defined. Now, this is a very controversial subject because what is national interest? And I remember asking this question on this very forum during a discussion. The true national interest needs to be defined. Foreign offices use the phrase national interest without giving its specifics. Quite often, the goal of national interest keeps shifting depending on the ideology of the government in power and the leader's ambitions. The phrase national interest in the 21st century should be defined as people's welfare. Nothing more, nothing less. Just this change of words has far-reaching implications. National interest is a vague phrase which can mean anything, but people's welfare is very specific. It means people's right to well-being, food, clothing, shelter, healthcare, education, human rights, etc. National interest is often a code word for aggressive nationalism and power projection against the weaker nations, leading to conflicts, not to people's welfare. We must de-glamorize power and domination in conducting relations with other nations, especially neighbors. And all big countries and powerful countries are guilty of this, especially when they deal with the weaker nations. Power, conquest, and domination brought some gains in the past, but not in today's industrial age. In the past, people led by a conqueror could occupy another country and make some economic gains. Not so anymore. There is no royal treasury to plunder, no gold, silver, jewels, no diamond, ruby, emerald, pearl-studded crowns and thrones to be carried away. The wealth of an industrial nation is in the talent, skill and hard work of the people, which cannot be taken by force or carried away. The wealth of an industrial today, it is much easier and more profitable to set up your own industry, run it efficiently with your people's talent and achieve prosperity. No more plunder and looting. People need to be educated about the reality that with technology, industry, and skilled manpower, prosperity is better. This is important to note, is better achieved by vertical progress rather than horizontal territorial expansion. Attempt at territorial expansion only leads to costly conflicts. Japan is a good example of the benefits of vertical progress. Note this, number 62 in terms of geographical size, it is number 3 in terms of GDP. Another example is Germany, with a geographical area 1/18 of Brazil. 1/18 of Brazil, it has a GDP 3 times of Brazil. It is all because of emphasis on vertical progress through technological efficiency. The concept, and both Japan and Germany learned this lesson after the Second World War. The concept of vertical progress is particularly important for South Asia because with 1.8 billion people, it has a population 6 times of US, but geographical area less than half. Now, patriotism needs to be redefined. Patriotism is a noble sentiment. It inspires people to make sacrifices to achieve unity and live together. But it is time to redefine patriotism. It should not be only about the sacrifices to confront an external adversary, but also to overcome the greater internal challenges of poverty, disease, environment degradation, etc. Instead of a negative feeling, we should make patriotism a positive passion. Attempt should be made to make patriotism not just national, but regional. Geographically, the subcontinent is a natural unit, isolated and protected from the rest of Asia by Himalaya mountains, but without natural barriers dividing the population within the peninsula. With the common river system, the various regions of the subcontinent are interdependent and all people will gain if they cooperate. It is for thinkers and intellectuals to provide the idea of common destiny for the people of the subcontinent. These countries with a common destiny, 3 countries with a common destiny should be the vision. Here again, there is much to learn from the example of European Union. 27 nations remain 27 countries, but with 1 passport and 1 currency. Each country and its people maintain their unique identity, but coordinate and cooperate for common economic goals. Once the idea of a common destiny takes root, it will change the dynamics of relationships between the countries of the region. Today, I always say intellectual property is far more precious than real property. Intellectual talent's role in prosperity and security of the people has increased exponentially in the past 200 years since the Industrial Revolution. Because industrial economy is an intellectual economy. Constant research, invention, and innovation are necessary for technology upgradation. New problems like more efficient utilization of natural resources to conserve them, fusion energy and prospects of space exploration require huge pool of high quality intellectual resources. For intellect to blossom, freedom of thought is the key. And all the intellectual talent that is required is not available in one country. We must promote the idea of diversity. Here again, intellectuals have to do a lot of work. It creates an intellectually vibrant environment, producing different currents of thought, resulting in cross-fertilization and birth of new ideas. Homogeneity in thinking produces intellectual stagnation. The subcontinent has enormous reserves of dormant intellectual talent that needs to be awakened and motivated by giving recognition, irrespective of the identity of the source, whether on the basis of religion or caste or creed. The most important condition for intellectual flowering of a people is human rights, freedom, and equality of all citizens. The subcontinent has the largest reservoir of youthful population in any region of the world. It needs education, motivation, and focus to make it productive. Otherwise, instead of being an asset, it will become a huge unemployable liability. There are emotional obstacles to removing tensions and conflicts in the region. People have been saturated by false propaganda and half-truths propagated for decades since the British left. Consequently, there is irrational hatred and fear of each other amongst the people of the region, both between the countries and within the countries, between various groups. There are innumerable territorial and river water sharing disputes. And this is important. There is no way these disputes can be resolved without changing the context. This can only be achieved if we convince the people of the benefits of shared prosperity. That should be the context for discussing any problem, bilateral or whatever. Without the agreed goal of shared prosperity, diplomatic talks and negotiations can go on forever without reaching an agreement or solution. Once people realize the benefits of shared prosperity, all issues will get a context and become amenable to solution. Commitment to the future and well-being of 1.8 billion people will make various disputes, whether territorial or river water sharing, minor and irrelevant. They look big because we do not put them in the context of the welfare and prosperity of 1.8 billion people. Countries need to give up claims. Countries need not give up claims, but disputes should be frozen for 99 years while people work together for a better future. The importance of context for solutions is illustrated by the dispute between Germany and France over a small enclave called Alsace-Lorraine, a German-speaking enclave of 2,000 square miles and a population of 2 million. Between 1648 and 1945, it was a bone of contention between France and Germany, and changed hand 5 times between the two countries, depending on which was the stronger at a given time. Shortly after 1945, both Germany and France committed themselves to the goal of shared European prosperity, and Alsace-Lorraine dispute was subsumed by this overarching vision, the vision of a prosperous Europe. The people of Alsace-Lorraine enjoy full human identity rights under the French sovereignty. What more can a people ask for? What more should anyone ask for? If you have equal rights in any society, that's all you need to have. France, Germany, and Alsace-Lorraine are all members of the European Union. They are all in the European Union. Similarly, England and Ireland, despite their history of deep animosity, were both in European Union until United Kingdom very short-sightedly walked out of it, hurting its own interests. The same is true of many of the other European countries who had wars and conflicts between them in the past, but now cooperate with each other in making Europe prosperous, strong, period. Institutes and think tanks should be established to do research and prepare. This is a concrete idea. Institutes and think tanks should be established to do research and prepare objective studies to show the extent to which the people of the region are losing because of tensions and conflicts, and how much they will gain for peace and negotiations. This idea came to me when I read a book which showed that the Middle East region since the conflict started has lost $11 trillion because of tensions and conflicts. These studies can show how regional cooperation in Europe, ASEAN, and South America has changed the dynamics of relationship, not only bringing prosperity, but also respect and dignity for the people. Only sustained effort in this direction will make impact on the minds of the people. Sustained effort will be required. For regional cooperation, the role of major regional country is crucial. In Europe, this role was played by France and Germany under two visionary leaders, President Charles de Gaulle of France and Chancellor Konrad Adenauer of Germany. They both adopted and lent political support to the ideas of intellectuals like Jean Monnet, Paul Henry Spaak, and Robert Schuman. In ASEAN, the role of Indonesia, by far the biggest country of the region, was crucial. The role of Brazil, a country which in terms of geographical area, population, and GDP is half of South America, was pivotal in the establishment of the regional common market, Mercosur, which has brought prosperity to the region and has ended conflicts. In South Asia, as the country with 70% of the region's population and GDP, India has its hands on the first gear to set in motion the process of shared prosperity for 1.8 billion people. This would not be an act of idealistic altruism for India, but its own enlightened self-interest. India, as the biggest country, will also be the biggest beneficiary of peace and prosperity in the region. To cynics who may say that Europe came to its senses only after 2 world wars in about 30 years, with tens of millions of deaths and destruction of cities, the simple answer is an Arabic proverb. Lucky are those who learn from the mistakes of others, and unlucky those who do so from their own. My own formulation is, bitter experience will teach those who do not learn from observation. Well, thank you for the patience, and I can only say I hope it will provoke comments, criticism, analysis, whatever. And thank you again. Once again, thank you.
Thank you, Ishrat. It was a wonderful prescription for going forward for a shared prosperity and how to approach it. Now I invite our Tariq Farooqi Saab for the concluding remarks.
Thank you, Dr. Aziuddin. Thank you, Dr. Abdullah, for the introduction. And thank you, Ishrat Aziz Saab, for very enlightened and thought-provoking conversation. Shared prosperity, key to peace and progress. The speaker, Mr. Ishrat Aziz, is an avid reader. I know that because of his reactions and his comments and his experience with my father talking about different books and all that. He has written extensively. He wrote a book on Quran and how modern Islam is being practiced. And he's a retired diplomat with extensive experience in the Middle East and elsewhere. He draws on this knowledge and experience to address the major issues faced by the inhabitants of South Asia. First of all, he cites some concerns. I'm not going to repeat everything, but just quickly, the population. He noticed that the South Asian population is huge and densely concentrated, 1.8 billion people, roughly 1/4 of the world's population today. Problems with forest cover, which is the lowest forest cover of any major country in the world. Water, he notes that the underground water table has fallen alarmingly in the last 50 years. And most of the water feeding the river systems come from the glaciers in the Himalayas and Tibet, and what would happen due to the global warming, which could make things worse. Notes that oil and gas, the subcontinent is short of natural resources like oil and gas. On top of that, territorial disputes. 3 neighboring countries of the region, the big countries, China, India, and Pakistan, with more than 3 billion people, 3 billion people out of 8 billion of the world population, have common borders, difficult relations, and territorial disputes. And all 3 have nuclear arsenals. They make things worse. And obstacles to peace, to progress. He notes that people have been saturated by false propaganda, half-truths propagated over decades. And then he goes on to talk about path forward. How do we make progress from this? Given all these problems, how do we proceed? And how do we address shared mutual interest, efficient economic models, and enlightened, and he discusses the enlightened role of intellectuals. The speaker suggests that politicians exploit existing sentiments to win elections. They appeal to the gut public emotions. You can see that in today's subcontinent. The intellectuals must step in. They can educate public on the natures of today's world and its requirements. And it goes on to define self-interest versus selfish interest, which was kind of interesting. The speaker opines again on economic prosperity, that prosperity is better achieved by economic progress rather than territorial expansion. He talks about vertical progress versus horizontal progress. Japan he cites as a good example, number 62 in terms of geographical size. It is 3rd in terms of GDP. So size does not matter. Patriotism, he wants to redefine patriotism, should not be only be sacrifices to confront an external adversary, but also to overcome the greater internal challenges of poverty, disease, and environmental degradation. Then he talks about common destiny. Kind of explains that industrial economy requires a very large common market. You cannot be self-sustained. Once the idea of common destiny takes root, it will change the dynamics and relationships between the countries of the region. He cites EU as an example. Talks about diversity. He says diversity creates an intellectual, vibrant environment, resulting in cross-fertilization and birth of new ideas. And then he mentions the population, the youth population of the subcontinent, and India, Pakistan, and then Bangladesh, of the largest reservoir of youthful population. It could be an asset if used properly. Finally, he mentions the regional cooperation and the role of India. He The speaker notes that for the regional cooperation, the role of the major regional country is crucial. He cites Europe. In Europe, this role is played by France and Germany under two visionary leaders, President de Gaulle and Chancellor Konrad Adenauer. In South Asia, India is the major player. This would not be, and he explains that by expanding on regional cooperation, it would not be an act of idealistic altruism, but enlightened self-interest, because that is how you make progress. That is how you expand your market. That is how you create a better economic model, and that is how you move forward. Excellent summary on the issues faced by the Indian subcontinent and how they could be addressed and resolved. We thank the speaker for this thought-provoking discussion. Thank you very much.
Wonderful concluding remarks. It looks like you were paying a lot of attention on Ishrat Saab's speech, and it is really remarkable prescription for shared prosperity. Before we go to question and answer session, we are 2 Saturdays, we are off on 24th and 31st. These 2 Saturdays, we are not doing anything. And we are coming back on January 7th with Professor Francis Pritchett. This will be our IDWDCM Sangam event, which is always on the first Saturday of the month. And she's going to talk on Mir Taqi Mir, a garden of Kashmir, putting Mir on the internet. Dr. Mozam Siddiqui and Noman Shaw will be accompanied by 2 other artists who will recite 2 ghazals of Mir also. A poster will follow. Thank you very much. And now I'm handing over to our host, Dr. Rafat Hussain, for question and answer. I'm sure there are some questions. Nonetheless, there are some experts sitting in the audience, and I silently have recommended Rafat also to invite them. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Razi Bhai, and thank you for the speakers, Ishrat Hussain Saab and Dr. Abdullah for the introduction, and Tariq Farooqi Saab. They are all our own colleagues, and so the session is open for question and answer, and there are 2 options. As I always tell you, that one is through the chat, or you can raise a digital hand. Or if that's not possible, you just raise your physical hand, and I will just watch if there is anyone waving at me. So I see there are 2 hands raised right now. And then I will begin with Dr. Rudranshu Singh, who regularly attend our events. Dr. Singh.
My question is to Ambassador Aziz Sahab that recently we have witnessed the rise of right-wing politics at the global level in the last 10 years or so. So is there any connection between the depletion of natural and economic resources all over the world, population rise, and since the politicians have no idea, no solution, so they have a good selling point of religious eccentricity and things like that, and which are prevailing in the subcontinent as well? And how can we get rid of the common eccentricity that both India and Pakistan have, the common hatred amongst each other?
Well, I agree that this rightist kind of approach is partly to divert attention from the real problems. One of the things about politics is that you have to win elections, and winning elections means you indulge in populism. It doesn't solve problems. it leaves problems in a worse shape, but that's the reality. I've always wondered what is the way out. I mean, we who think and who have ideas then must come forward. People do not want to stand up for unpopular ideas. And that is where I have a complaint, because before, after retirement, for quite some time, I used to attend seminars in Delhi, and I spoke on lots of subjects. What I found was that people, even intellectuals, did not want to take an unpopular position. Now, if people don't take unpopular positions, then politicians are not going to do it. And there is this whole concept of guilty by omission, which means that if something wrong is going on, it is for you to come forward and say so. Very few people want to do it. So this, as they say, bad governments are elected by good people who don't vote. Similarly, wrong ideas circulate and get traction. And mind you, wrong ideas get traction very easily. If you talk of patriotism, for example, this is my view, that patriotism should try to set things right at home, rather than just thinking of some adversary far off place. 10,000, sometimes countries get involved in something that happened 10,000 miles away. So, and forget the problems at home. So to my mind, getting so many things right. For example, I also feel that nationalism needs to be redefined. Why do we talk? What is nationalism versus people? What is for example, and I have written about it, if you look at the constitution of any country, it doesn't talk of nation and national, it talks of people and citizen. People is a very clear defined term. People is people. You can count them. But nationalism or nation, then definition comes in. Cultural reasons, even religion gets thrown in, race gets thrown in, language, common history. So these are many things that it is for intellectuals to take up. Politicians will not do it. Politicians, there are very few. I will not say that they are statesmen. There are people, politicians, who take an unpopular stand. There are people like Gorbachev who took an unpopular stand. There are people like Anwar Sadat who took an unpopular stand. There has been a president like Abraham Lincoln. He took an unpopular stand. But they are very, very few. And to my mind, the intellectuals, the academics, the journalists also, there are some, but there are not many, as you all know, who have intellectual integrity. It is not enough to be an intellectual. You must have integrity. Otherwise, your intellect is not going to produce much. So coming to the question that you may raised, is it because of this, an attempt really to divert attention from other issues, a huge population? I did not go into details, but I might mention that only less than 100 years ago, the world population became 2 billion for the first time, 1927. And today, less than 100 years later, you have added 6 billion people more in just less than 100 years. And it is projected to reach 10 billion. Can you imagine the problems that we will face And don't we require a global approach? Environment requires global approach. In fact, I go to the extent of saying patriotism must become global, not only regional, but it must become global. Otherwise, there is no future for the 8 or 10 billion people that are crowding this planet. I hope I answered your question to some extent.
Thank you, Ishrat Saab. The next person
Thank
is
you,
Syed
sir.
Amir Saab. Amir bhai. Unmute.
Thank you, Ambassador Aziz. Fascinating. I'm also impressed by your optimism and your rosy view and your emphasis on South Asia, and naturally so. What I wonder is how realistic it is, because if you go back South Asia, I'm thinking mostly India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, had never been a unity. It was forced by the East India Company, as I said, by the force of arms, very briefly during the days of Aurangzeb, but the subcontinent has never been a one unity. What is there to drive a cohesive entity, India, Pakistan, South Asia? Even if you see in Europe, yes, briefly Commonwealth, but I mean, for going centuries, they have been fighting in the name of nationalism. And in Britain, we see that there are already voices in Scotland for separation from the United Kingdom. So trends seem to be the theory of chaos. That is the default position of humanity, chaos, unless some energy is invested in putting it together or making a cohesive entity. Thank you. I look forward to your answer.
Thank you for your question. Thank you. I appreciate it. Let me begin by saying this is my own, you could say, quote. Idealism is long-term realism. I repeat, idealism is long-term realism. And what do I mean? Look, European Union idea, you know the history of Europe. You know the history of the Indian subcontinent, and so do I. European history, France and Germany were bitter enemies for centuries. I mentioned very briefly the case of Alsace-Lorraine. There was much fighting between the two countries over that piece of territory, which is about 2,000 square miles with 2 million people. In 1648, after the Treaty of Westphalia, after the 30-year war between Protestants and Catholics in Europe, Germany surrendered, because by then France had become quite strong. Germany surrendered Alsace and Lorraine to France, 1648. Now, fast forward. I think 1882, Germany became very strong under Bismarck. So it took back Alsace-Lorraine. All right. Then what happens? The First World War ends, which ends in 1919. Germany is defeated, France is stronger, so it takes back Alsace-Lorraine. Good. France was stronger. Then in 1940, Germany defeats France in the Second World War and takes back Alsace-Lorraine. All right. It kept Alsace-Lorraine for about 4 years, and then it was defeated by the Allies, and France took back Alsace-Lorraine. So, as I said, it changed hands 5 times. Today, nobody in France or Germany talks about it. You see, there is we must realize why people have disputes. If you give equal rights to everybody, to every member of the, or everyone in the country, in the state, if you give them equal rights, freedom, now you can say that it is all idealism, it is not going to happen. And remember one thing, that struggle for equal rights, human rights, women's rights, all this has taken time. It has taken a lot of struggle. But the only solution to people living peacefully in a society is equal rights. Where people get equal rights, they don't separate. And I'll give you further examples. Where there is democracy, people don't easily separate. You know, in Canada, people of Quebec have a distinct identity. And there has been movement there for separation from Canada. But in spite of referendum, they have not. Similarly, in Scotland, there is a movement for a separate Scotland. But they haven't so far separated despite referendum. Compare this, because there is equal rights. As far as there can be equal rights in reality, in practice, there is equal rights. Because I know full well, you can give equal rights in constitution, but not in practice. But take the two other examples. In Indonesia, there was a small enclave called East Timor. There was a referendum and they separated. Why? Because Indonesia leaves much to be desired as far as human rights is concerned, equal rights is concerned. Similarly, I give you the example of Sudan. Southern Sudan separated because they felt they were not getting equal rights. They were not being treated as equals. To my mind, now you can differ with it. I believe that when people get equal rights, they don't want separation. In fact, if you give justice and equality to a people, others will come and join you, just as many people come and join and come to America because they feel, oh, not only there are dollars to be made, but there is equality, and equality leads to opportunity. So I think, again, to come back to your question, you did mention idealism and rosy outlook, probably. Now, I would again reiterate my own favorite approach, which is idealism is long-term realism. And it has been achieved. In Europe, it has been achieved. In Europe, after all the history of bitter conflicts, in fact, I don't think there is any other area of the world which has had so many conflicts and wars. And certainly in the 20th century, more blood was shed than anywhere else that I can think of. Estimates are that during the two world wars, something like 60 to 70 million people died. And yet, then they realized that there is no point. The empires are all gone. You cannot keep colonial empires. And you better focus on, as I say, vertical progress for prosperity than horizontal expansion. And let me here add a little thing. It's interesting. After Britain lost its empire, and so did France, as a result of Second World War, it's not that they became poor. In fact, they became more prosperous. Without the empires, they are more prosperous today than they have ever been in history. I give the example of Singapore, which is a country with 6 million people and a very small area. Their population density, by the way, is 18,000 per square mile. And yet, their per capita GDP is 50% more than that of United States. So now you can disagree with me that for people, the most important consideration is peace, prosperity, so that they can achieve self-realization, they can bring up families, their progeny, and look to a future. But I think that is, to me, at the bottom of it all, That is the driving force. People want prosperity, which requires equality and justice, because people think, oh, capital makes a country prosperous and for development, capital is essential. More essential than capital is what you call rule of law, which means justice, equality. And if you don't have it, you cannot have progress. That's my observation of, and I'm about 83, and that's how I view it. And again, I believe that optimism is not absence of pessimism. Optimism is conquest of pessimism. And let's try. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Satyanath Chaudhary sir. And he also had a comment in the chat box. Go ahead, Satyanath sir.
Yes, I'm glad you mentioned about the comment. I'll just read that, and that's what I wanted to ask and the comment. First of all, I want to express my deepest appreciation for your wonderful presentation, promoting the idea of shared prosperity. In this connection, I just wanted to mention also, Switzerland has the idea of shared power sharing in political and social sense. So somehow if that could be also combined with this idea of social prosperity, that would be great. I would very much appreciate if you could post the transcripts of your presentation in this Google group, and also of the links to your other writings. I'm sure they are as wonderful as this presentation is. And even when the regions, states, and countries accept the idea of shared prosperity, there would be areas of dispute. And I feel that participants of this idea should be willing to accept the idea of solving all disputes via mutually acceptable intervention of neutral entities, including mediation, arbitration, and adjudication. How about applying these ideas to solving disputes between India and Pakistan and India and China as well? Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Satyanath Chaudhary Sahab. I do write. I have taken to writing blogs, and the blog site is called humanaffairs.com. Humanaffairs.com. I'll be happy to pass it on to people. No, it's not. I'm sorry. It's humanaffairs.org. Humanaffairs.org. And I have been writing about various issues, and I intend to write one blog a week. I have already got 5, 6 or something like that, and there will be many more coming. I have written a book which hopefully will get published. But and of course, I must say that whatever I say quite often can be very, in spite of my effort not to try to be controversial, they can be controversial, because what I'm saying is contrary to the prevailing wisdom quite often. You very rightly mentioned Switzerland and sharing of power. I mean, they have done a wonderful job. And that's one reason Switzerland is one of the most prosperous countries and a very solid society, despite having 3 kind of linguistic or ethnic groups, whatever you want to call them, the Italians, the French, and the Germans. But this is the thing. You see, we study political science and then we study economics, and we think that 2 are not related. Actually, they are inseparable. If you don't have good politics, you can forget about good economics. And if you don't have good economics, you can't have good politics either. equality to me, and you have mentioned equal sharing of power. I have very controversial views about certain matters, and I think I said a controversial thing right in the beginning, that where self-interest, and self-interest is a term which I could go on elaborating, because when I use a word, I think of all the implications of that word, and concept words have lots of implications. So the thing is that self-interest, and I distinguished between self-interest and selfish interest after a lot of thought. Self-interest, I say everybody must pursue self-interest, because if you don't pursue your own interest, who will do it? But when you pursue your self-interest, also remember one thing, that other side also has its self-interest. And if you ignore the self-interest of the other side, you will not be able to pursue your self-interest for long, because there it will clash with the other side. You know, you have rights in a society, but you also have duties. So selfish interest goes to so far in self-interest that it ignores the interest of the other side. So it becomes really selfish, and it leads to conflict. But if you pursue your self-interest, while at the same time recognizing the self-interest of the others, then it does not lead to conflict. It becomes a win-win situation. Actually, I think I said in my paper that self-interest is a win-win situation, and it is selfish interest which leads to conflicts. So these are ideas that I keep writing about. And I think one of the blogs that I will write would be, and I will elaborate on it, idealism is long-term realism. And it is so-called real. And if you look at it, realism, what is the meaning? I must say, I have to keep in mind my timing, because 12 o'clock I must go to some place, so I will take leave. But idealism, just think about idealism. What is people think that idealism is being impractical. No, idealism is not being impractical. There is I'm very fond of using a term, pragmatism. Even Abdullah used the word pragmatism for some reason. Pragmatism is a short-term compromise you make for achieving a long-term goal, because in human affairs, it is different. In human affairs, things take a long time to be achieved. In science, you can, in human affairs, achieving anything is like planting a tree. You planting a sapling or putting a seed. It takes time to grow. You cannot make a plant grow, say, oh, I will put 5 malis and the plant will be ready tomorrow. But you can do that with Empire State Building. Empire State Building was constructed in 11 months, but not with plants, not with societies. You cannot change a society overnight, because in society, the people living in society have what I would call inertia. There is a reality that exists because of historical reasons, because of knowledge that exists in the society at that time. So to change for example, I may have discussion with somebody and people may think we are differing. Maybe we are differing only because my pool of experience and knowledge and his pool of knowledge and experience is different. So to change the pool of knowledge of a society, to bring about change is not going to be easy. So the task that we have, and so therefore people think that changing realism is to just compromise with the existing situation. I would give example further. People would say Hitler was a realist. Why? Because he didn't believe in idealism, because he would not compromise with anybody. He wanted his way. You would say democracy, there is a lot of sometimes idealism, at least there is more idealism in democracy than realism, than in a dictatorship. But just look at the history of 20th century history of dictatorships, which did succeed. But democracies have succeeded. There are democracies which have been functional for 250 years, and they have produced results. So the idea that realism is somehow being uncompromising, using force as the first option is realism, while discussing and compromising and looking at long term is idealism. I would say idealism has succeeded. In that sense, idealism has succeeded more often than so-called realism. Who are realists? They say, use the force, settle the matter by force. Don't go into all these discussions. Is that realism? Has it produced results? I mean, we must judge things not in abstract, in theory. We must get down to facts, what happened. By defining, I mean, I'm very much against the definition. In fact, I remember on this very forum, I raised a question to a very eminent person. And I said, who do you think in South Asia, which country, which government in South Asia is really pursuing its self-interest? And what is your definition of national interest? What is your definition of national interest? And he rightly pointed out, he said, national interest is what a government of that time says is national interest, which means that the definition of national interest can change. So how can the definition of national interest change? I don't understand. Can you say our national interest is to have peace with other countries, and somebody comes and says, no, our national is to dominate. Our nationalism is to domination, project power, forget about all this people's welfare, etc. Shared prosperity. It's not realism.
Ishrat bhai, we have many people lined up, please.
Oh, really? I'm sorry. I don't see them so.
No, I mean, Razi bhai has asked me to invite some. Okay, the person is Adil Wassab.
Brief responses will cover many other people.
Yeah, I know.
Could-
Adil
could he-
Wassab.
Could he please complete his answer in the next minute or so?
Oh,
Beg your pardon?
Ishrat bhai is not complete yet?
No.
No, I have completed, and the answer can never be completed because there are so many things to say. But I hope I have made whatever I wanted to say quite clear.
Yes.
What about applying the idea to India, Pakistan, and India, China? I mean,
That is more a specific question, but that was never.
Yeah, I think both people of India and Pakistan need to be told that they are, in so far as there is an approach of confrontation, it is wrong, that there is no reason for the kind of animosity that exists between the people and the countries. There is no basis for it. It is only harming them, and they should learn from European Union, which is, to my mind, the most, how should I say, constructive diplomacy that I have seen in 20th century. It was really, it changed the dynamics of relationship in Europe.
Let's move
And
to other,
India and China.
let's move to other questions.
Yeah. So thank you. And before I invite some of the people for expert comment, and they are Iram Gul Saiba, Sen Saab, Syed Naqvi. So please be ready and then answer. So I do have one question before we move on the invitations part. So Ishrat Bhai, you said,
Ji,
you quoted that idealism is a long-term realism.
ji,
And
ji.
I really like the comment, the quote. So India has idealism, and they call it, okay, Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. So how long it will take for idealism, that idealism, to convert to the realism?
As is your question, have you asked your question, or do you have anything to add there?
No, I am done.
Yeah.
I'm asking whether how long it will take. They have idealistic approach.
Yeah,
In
this will happen eventually, to my mind. That we are fond of saying world is one family. I think charity begins at home. So we must make India one family, and make then South Asia one family, and then the world one family. You know why? I have done a lot of reading and thinking on this whole subject. What is our future? Can 10 billion people live on this planet? By the way, let me give you some more statistics very briefly. In Christ's time, there were 4.5 people living per square mile on this planet. 4.5 individuals. Today, it is 140. And tomorrow, which means by 2050, there will be 175 people per square mile. How can they live? And this, don't forget, per square mile means not just all arable land and fertile land. There are 10 million square miles of this world is probably desert. Another 10 million square miles is frozen tundras. By the way, people maybe don't realize, but Antarctic, after Russia, it is the largest piece of territory on the globe. So if you take 1 square mile and 140 people per square mile, then they must grow food, they must have land for pastures, they must have roads, they must have housing. Everything must be on this 1 square mile between 140 people. How will you survive? Environment is a global thing. If you want to deal with environment, deal with it globally. And if you cannot deal with environment will one day overwhelm you. So I think when many of these ideas, when they sink into people's mind, how many people really are aware of what is the world we live in? No. So the way to solve these problems is to make people aware of the problem and eventually solve them. It is, if people want to solve problems, politicians will listen. Politicians only listen to people. Unfortunately, people don't know the whole truth, and so they are unable to hold their politicians accountable.
Okay, thank you. That's so Iram Gul Saiba. Oh, sorry, I have to invite.
Thank you.
Yeah, go ahead. Did I invite Adil Saab?
Thank you. Thank you.
No, okay. Iram Saiba, hold on for a second. Adil, what's up?
Hello, can you hear me right now?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. First of all, thank you everyone for giving me a chance to speak. Actually, I'm from Pakistan, but I've lived overseas for most of the time. So I'm here because Mr. Ramputiani was referring about this Zoom meeting. So I have few questions actually. As far as can you hear me right now?
I
Yeah, please
can.
be brief.
Yeah. First of all, since we're talking about South Asia collaboration, all those things, there are two things I need to speak about. First thing is this wave of pan-Islamism. You think this is going to end soon because this is because it's not realistic anymore. And you know, if you check history of the subcontinent, then our ancestors were very into Khilafat movement, all those things. That keeps going on. And will they reconcile with changing time? And second part is right now we have social media influx right now, left wing, right wing, ultra conservatism, right, all those things going on. So at this stage, do you really believe this is like with social media, all those channels, our society, our whole planet is divided by a big time. If we check, because if we check media right now, whether it's India, Pakistan, US, Canada, there's a stark difference. There's a black and white right now. You think because of all these Twitter and all those social media, we have become more divided and less realistic and or we can say creative at this stage. These are a few things I need to speak.
Thank you, Aziz sir.
Well, these things called pan-Islamism and pan so many other things. I am against all these isms, divisive isms, because to my mind, we must think of humanity more than community. People will get shocked at it. Some people will take objection to it. But I think community is a part of humanity. A person is a human being before he is anything else. So I am opposed to pan-Islamism or any other kind of similar, ideas. There are many. In Islam is not the only basis for. There used to be world communism, and then there is. So many isms are there. So I am opposed to them. I think they don't solve any problem. In fact, all the great thinkers have, even men of religion, have emphasized humanity finally, and they thought community is a step to humanity. And unfortunately, the followers just stop at the community and forget the humanity. The other point is that what was your second point? Let me recall again.
I was speaking about divisive part, like,
yes, about social media and so on.
And we are ruining it. Even relation, I've seen people breaking off friendship because of they have opposing views. That's the reason.
Yes, unfortunately, two things. People should not lose friendship. We should know how to agree to differ, because otherwise discussion is not possible. I mean, I may have some very frank views. My intentions are honest. So people should not take exception to difference of opinion, but to how that opinion is expressed and how tolerant you are of the other opinion. But that's a separate matter. I must say I am disappointed with social media. I thought social media will become a means of everybody speaking out, and therefore the truth will be established when every viewpoint is expressed. Unfortunately, social media has taken advantage of the fact that, or people have taken advantage of social media to project a certain viewpoint while others are remaining kind of silent majority. And this has harmed social media, and social media with me has lost a lot of credibility, because when I read, I say, well, is it really true? And a lot of it is not true. So social media has become a means of propaganda and divisiveness rather than the original idea of social media being to every viewpoint coming into the public domain and the public coming to the right conclusions or better conclusions. Unfortunately, the biggest problem is that people do not take enough interest in trying to understand issues and to trying to understand the world around them.
Thank you.
Yes.
Okay, so Iram Gul Saiba, and then last question from Abdul Jabbar Saab. He has a comment on Ukraine war. Okay, Iram Gul Saiba.
Thank you, Rafa. Sir, I agree to you, Sir Ishrat Aziz Saab, कि जो patriotism है, it should be progressive. It should not give rise to war and fight. But sir, don't you think that in this region, in subcontinent, there are so many differences in our society, in India and Pakistan both. We have a long history of social classification. We have caste system here, and then we have a big difference between elite class and the masses. You know, even masses don't have concern of coming and going of the ruler before the British came, and then after British religious differences arose, and it followed after nationalism and patriotism. That is recent condition which leads us to wars and fights and antagonism. With the presence of these lot of differences, how can we patch up differences between India and Pakistan, and how can we go to the way where we people of this region can progress? Because our elites don't want to do this, but we people want to do this. How this can be achieved? Thank you.
Well, I agree with you on one point, that elites don't agree with certain things which people want. I've always said that democracies have failed not because of the masses, but because of the few who want to perpetuate the status quo. And you can find that in any country, that masses want one thing, but the elite doesn't want it, because they want to protect and perpetuate their benefits from the status quo. How can it be done? There is no easy solution. There is, fortunately, in science and technology, solutions take time to discover, but once they are discovered, they really work. But with human beings, that's the problem. Human beings are, how should I say, in nature, I always say there is no lying. In nature, there is no hypocrisy. In nature, there is no double standard. In nature, there is no cheating. But all these things are there in human beings. Unfortunately, or fortunately, I should say fortunately, there is also the opposite side to it. I keep saying all evil in the world is due to human beings, but so is all the good, by the way. All the good that you see achieved has been achieved by human beings. And there is a good strain in human beings. And I don't believe in trying to destroy evil. I want to promote the good in human beings so that it is able to overcome evil within itself. So let us have faith in the basic goodness of human nature. If you look, there are two ways of dealing with issues, or there are two ways of thinking. One is based that human beings cannot be trusted, so they must be dealt with by force. They lead to dictatorship. There is another line of thought which says human beings are essentially good, and given a chance, the good will come out. And that leads to democracy. I am very clear in my own mind that human nature is essentially good. It yields to temptation, but it aspires to good. And let us try to strengthen that aspiration for good in human nature rather than just trying to control the evil through authority.
Thank you. And I know there are only a few minutes left before Ishrat Saab has to leave. The last comment from Abdul Jabbar Saab.
So thank you. It's a remarkable presentation, both diplomatically, political, also philosophical. So that you kind of the whole range of discussion. So the one of the things I was wondering about your fascination, I'm sure, I think everybody agrees on that, European Union, success of European Union. I think you addressed that the last question I asked this, I had this very similar kind of concerns. European Union, the kind of cooperation, success, I think how much it could be kind of translated into this South Asian context, especially if the Asian countries, they are kind of live their, they come with the packages, the past in their, the cultural traditions, religious traditions. I think that is not the case, I think, in the European Union case. So then how do you, you are a very optimistic person, I can see that. You are very optimistic, that you have been successful in that, promoting that kind of concept. I think it's now you're looking at the Ukraine war. So clearly there's Brexit happened, UK left the EU. So clearly there's a very complex nature of the interactions among leaders or the people. So I think the same, the EU, it's very difficult, it's a very different beast as far as in terms of success stories is concerned. I think India, Pakistan, China, that's very different arena. But you're optimistic, but I think I'm somebody I'm looking at outside. I'm also optimistic, but I think it's with measured optimism. Thank you.
Well, I agree with you that South Asia history circumstances are in many ways different to the history and circumstances of Europe. But there are similarities also. And I would be the last person to say that it's anything but difficult to achieve results, especially considering the given reality. The given reality is there has been a lot of false propaganda. The whole area is saturated with false propaganda, and so to come up with the truth, it's not easy. And mind you, truth is very much an intellectual concept. And intellectual concepts don't enter people's personality easily. We are used to certain ways of thinking which are in our blood, and to just change it is not at all easy. Still, I feel that there is a possibility. I don't know when we will have visionary, not just leaders, because visionary leaders is visionary leaders in the true sense of the word. But when we will have really the elite itself, and when will they realize the need for visionary approach if they are told again and again? That is why I believe that it is important to show both the countries and the people, not just both. I look at the subcontinent, the people of the subcontinent to realize that their interests are common. Now, I don't believe that religious divide can trump self-interest, secular self-interest. But and that's saying a very, how should I say, a very bold thing, maybe audacious thing to say, that, well, self-interest is more important than, religion. And I said, I think in one of the remarks, I said that where self-interest unites, religion cannot divide. And where self-interest divides, religion cannot unite. I base myself on the fact that I have seen in history, even like, for example, if you go to Latin America, there was a lot of problem between Brazil and other countries, but Brazil realized that there is no point in conflicts. It's not in our interest. So it is not in the interest of India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, for that matter, any other country of South Asian region, to keep these conflicts alive. These conflicts have been, actually, if you look at it, religion has been used, religion which came to promote peace and amity and unity has been used to divide people by some people for their own ambitions. They use the ideology, they use religion, they will use anything. It is for people who are not ambitious in that sense, who want to lead a decent life, to come out and do something about it. I don't see any other way out.
Thank you. Great discussion. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And that concludes the question and answer session. And I will pass on to Dr. Raziuddin for his last comment or question. And we are only left with 10 minutes.
So, all right, thank you, Rafat. Ishrat bhai, can I ask you a very specific question and anticipate a specific response?
Very, very. Yeah. Be very specific, and I promise you a very specific answer.
So the specific question is, you keep on saying idealism, vision, and things for common good and welfare of people. But all communities, they are people, they are real people. They have other emotions besides roti, kapda, makan. Otherwise, 1.5 or 6 billion people cannot be so stupid just to remain divided. If they know this basic, in spite of that, there are other compulsions, other reasons. That's how they define their own values. And everybody is not just the same. Even regions also differ in their understanding of common good. So the visionaries, when we call the visionaries Nehru, Azad, or Jinnah, and all, they messed up the whole thing. They were visionaries. But if the common people go to solve this problem, there must be some specific prescription. Why we are just faltering, why we are so much in frustration, in spite of this basic knowledge that we should be cooperating to each other, we should be friendly to each other. There is a common goodness in all humans, but these are all superficial things. The real thing is people who think differently. A person in Lucknow thinks very differently than in Peshawar, in spite of knowing the same needs of roti, kapda, makan. So how you reconcile and put a prescription just to solve these miseries that all the time people are suffering?
Well, Razi, it's a very not an easy question to answer very specifically. I mean, there is a specific answer, but that's a very lengthy answer, and I don't want to I don't think there is time to go
Give
into
it
that
short
lengthy
and-
answer. But let me mention one thing.
Yeah,
People
summarize.
have their own aspirations. People have their own thinking. But how does unity come in the way of your way of life? I want my way of life. I want to eat in a certain way, pray in a certain way, and what else? Dress in a certain way. But how does it come in the way of unity? Because unity is required only for economic prosperity. Believe me, in Europe, they found the formula. It might interest your listeners to know that 40%, I was told, of the staff working in European Union headquarters in Brussels is of translators. Their job is every document, every speech has to be translated in all these 27 languages. And each country has the right to veto. So in each country has a right to its way, and each people, and within the same country, different people of different regions have a right to their way of life. But when it comes to economic cooperation, then unity is brought in. European Union idea is an economic idea, though this economic idea has led to a concept of European unity, European personality, and even it has brought dignity to the people. But what I don't understand is,
Because it
or
was
rather-
easy. It was
Huh?
easy to achieve. There was no other reason. They have same race, same religion, same kind of values. Europe essentially had same background values, except that they were just divided into different regions. We have different problems. Our problems are distinctly different. Not the European problems are very homogeneous problem. They were just divided because of old demarcations of empires and contesting power. They had no other reasons. But we had totally multiple and complex reasons. We have, even within India, we have a north and south reason. There is a genuine reason. So these reasons have to be overcome by understanding, but how to understand, that is the problem.
well, there are two questions: how to understand, and what is it that will make people understand?
Yeah, sure.
What is it that people is a common uniting factor? Is there? Because if there is none,
So
then you
Ishrat,
cannot unite a people.
I
You
give you
cannot
an
unite
example.
a people by force.
I just give you an example. Dr. Abdul Jabbar, who asked a question, he comes from the same community. We both are Muslims from India. He comes from the extreme southern belt of India. I come from the extreme northeastern belt, or maybe north belt. Very many things are common, but political understanding, his experiences, his observations of the same community and the larger Indian community distinctly different than me, in spite of many commonalities. And we are very good friends. So you can see, even within the same community, within the same country. And then Rudranshu sitting, who is a Hindu, I am a Muslim, he comes from the same region. Still, there is a distinct difference in thinking, in spite of commonality. So these things we cannot just take it out. This has to be part of our discussion. What is problem with it between, suppose what is problem between Hindu and Muslims? There is a genuine problem in India. Why? It is not false propaganda. There are some reasons.
What are those exact problems? Because as I see it, there are problems, but there is a unifying commonality also.
Of course, yeah. चलिए कोई बात नहीं, आपको टाइम बहुत हो गया,
So, Razi bhai,
जाना है,
so-
and let's finish this, and it's all done, and already formal part is over. We were just, once Rafat said that we are over. I was just putting the last words, and thank you very much, Aziz Saab, and this will be an edited version, will come as a YouTube. All these things which are as a loose talk will not be part of that. Faisal takes care about it. It will come in few days probably in public. And thank you very much for a very spirited discussion and talk. We learned a lot.
Okay, thank you all the speakers, Ishrat Bhai, Abdullah Bhai and Tariq Bhai. Thank you so much.
आप लोग गम ना करें, अगर हार गई है टीम अपनी तो
हार
कोई
गई।
बात नहीं, अब थोड़ी नमाज ज्यादा पढ़े। रुद्रांशु, you should also make dua for us. No, world Muslim have lost a golden chance, so we will.
तो रजी भाई, आपके लास्ट पॉइंट पे जब वो इकोनॉमिक जो है, जो इशरत भाई ने कहा कि इकोनॉमिक डिस्पैरिटी या
Professor Shukla was sitting. You should have dragged him. He just left.
Sir,
so can the economic parity be the common denominator?
Can I make a small point? Can I
just add one sentence? When the biggest conflicting factor in any society is not religion, it is economic disparity.
Yeah.
And that is an issue we have not been able to resolve throughout history anywhere.
Yeah.
So we should try to focus on those the things that everybody wants, which is everybody's aspiration.
Yeah. Yes, I agree with that point, because economic prosperity could be a despite all of our differences.
That changes the whole perception.
And the last point that Razi Sahab was making, how the difference between Hindus and Muslims be negotiated through economic growth. Yes, they can be. For example, when both will study in convent schools, both will join the elite clubs, both will become highly educated, then it will open the doors for inter-religious marriages. And then the problem.
But that's not a solution. What are you talking about? That's not a solution.
Rudanshu is right.
And also when they will live outside India.
You are targeting people. That's not the response.
Rudanshu is right in one aspect. Actually, it does make a difference, because right now among Muslims too, we talk about, Muslims and Hindus. Among Muslims too, there's a big differences between the elites and the non-elites. We don't even know them very well. बात करते हैं कि हमारे यहाँ कास्ट सिस्टम नहीं है, बल्कि इंडिया में बहुत established कास्ट सिस्टम है among all religions. वो बेचारे जो लखनऊ में भी हमारे बहुत से एरियाज हैं, मुस्लिम एरियाज में, वहाँ पे कहते थे हम लोग वहीं जाएंगे, वहाँ पे ये गंदे लगते हैं, यहाँ पे ये है।
Okay.
थैंक यू। मैं इजाजत चाहता हूँ। मैंने अपनी बेटी से प्रॉमिस किया था कि मैं ठीक 12 बजे नीचे आ जाऊंगा।
ठीक है, थैंक यू सो मच एंड आई अप्रिशिएट।
नमाज वगैरह पढ़ने तो नहीं जा रहे क्या?
एंड थैंक यू Abdullah for the introduction, and thank you Tariq for such a comprehensive summation of what I said. Thank you.
Thank you.
ये तो समझ में आ गया कि तारिक भाई ने आपकी स्पीच पढ़ी थी अच्छी तरह से।
वो I know कि इशरत अजीज साहब बहुत ही detailed oriented आदमी है। I know that because of his conversations with my father. So मुझे मालूम था कि मुझे prepare करना है।
Thank you.
Good job.
It helps. Though there were not that many people today because of match and whatever, but it was a good interaction. I liked it.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. चलिए आप जाएं please. Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
बस खाली लीव बटन दबा दीजिए।
अब आप जाएं इशरत भाई।
कर रहा हूँ भाई, कहाँ?
लीव कंप्यूटर बंद कीजिए, जाइए।
दबा दीजिए और नहीं तो चले जाइए, कोई फर्क नहीं पड़ता।
लीव मी।
हाँ लीव मी। जमाना बदल गया उनका।
तो ज्यादातर लोगों का एक ही सवाल था, और एक ही, जब आप शेयर्ड प्रॉस्पेरिटी की साउथ एशिया में बात करेंगे तो एक ही चीज आती है, इंडिया, पाकिस्तान, बांग्लादेश। And unfortunately or fortunately that was not covered. What
Iram को बुलाएं। Iram
तो I had a similar question. Everyone was asking the same thing. what these two countries, Bangladesh, of course, you include, but India, Pakistan, in spite of all the differences, why there is there any hope that they will ever be coming together for economic prosperity?
Sir,
That was the question. And
सुन ले इरम is on the ground in Pakistan. ठीक है, वो उनसे पूछने से ये समझ में आएगा कि पाकिस्तान एक होता है कि हम लोग पाकिस्तानी या हिंदुस्तानी यहाँ बैठे हैं. She is right there. She teaches in colleges and she's right there. She knows the psyche and people और क्या वहाँ चलता है. इरम बोले या उसी तरह से ये रुझान है जो इंडिया में इस तरह से. So this will be the real reflection. इरम प्लीज आप उर्दू में बोलिए.
थैंक यू रजी साहब. मैं भी बहुत सारी बातें करना चाह रही थी लेकिन ज़्यादा टाइम कम होता है तो वो नहीं कर सकता उस वक्त जब सेशन चल रहा होता है. हम लोगों के यहाँ पे जब पाकिस्तान में भी बहुत सारी ऐसी चीज़ें हैं, ऐसी सब बातें हैं जिनको मैं खुद भी समझती हूँ कि उनका सलूशन निकलना चाहिए. जब तक वो उन चीज़ों का सलूशन, उन बातों का सलूशन नहीं निकलेगा तो शायद हमारे मसले पाकिस्तान इंडिया के जो है वो बल्कि बांग्लादेश के भी ख़त्म नहीं हो सकते. सबसे पहले तो चूँकि मैं एक हिस्ट्री की स्टूडेंट हूँ तो हिस्टोरिकली अगर हम देखें ये सारा सिलसिला तो मैं ये समझती हूँ, मैं खुद सोचती भी हूँ, समझती हूँ कि पाकिस्तान बनने से पहले और बल्कि उससे भी कुछ पहले जो 1857 से अगर हम स्टार्ट कर लें तो 1857 में जो हमने जंग लड़ी थी वो तो हमने इकट्ठे लड़ी थी, हिंदू हों या मुसलमान हों. उसके बाद ऐसा क्या हुआ कि हिंदू जो है वो किसी और लाइन पे चल पड़ा और मुसलमान जो है वो किसी और लाइन पे चल पड़ा. फिर वो हमने अपने जैसे ग्रैंड पेरेंट्स से सुना क्योंकि वो माइग्रेट करके आए थे यहाँ पर कि हिंदू मुस्लिम फसादात होते थे. और मेरे जो दादा थे उन्होंने बताया था कि जब पार्टीशन हुई पाकिस्तान बना तो उनके वो देहरादून से आए थे तो उनके इलाके के जो लोग थे वो जो हिंदू वो ये लोग मिनॉरिटी में थे और हिंदू मेजॉरिटी में थे वहाँ पे. तो उन्होंने स्पेशल टारगेट किया था कि सूफी साहब को नहीं छोड़ना. सूफी साहब कहलाते थे मेरे दादाजी. तो फिर ये सारे जो लोग हैं फैमिली सारी इकट्ठी हो गए और खामोशी से चुपके से वहां से निकल आई. तो ये इतनी एक्सट्रीम सिचुएशन कैसे बनी, ये क्वेश्चन है जो कि अभी तक मुझे
ये तो रिएक्शन की बात हुई ना, ये मार पिटाई तो रिएक्शन में होता. बात असल में ये थी कि वो डिवीजन क्यों हुआ. ये तो रिएक्शन है कि बाद में जब आप भागेंगे डिवाइड करेंगे तो एक दूसरे को तो जरूर मारेंगे लोग, ये ह्यूमन नेचर. लेकिन रियल इशू ये
डिवाइड से पहले शुरू हो चुका था सर. ये डिवाइड से पहले
रियल इशू ये है कि
मार्च 1947 से स्टार्ट हो चुका था ये सारा जो है.
इरम रियल इशू ये है कि अगर इकट्ठा थे तो डिवाइड क्यों हुए, ये इशू है. उसके बाद वाला इशू नहीं कोई है, उसके बाद तो रिएक्शन है.
देखिए ना, एक सूरत ये भी है कि हिंदुस्तान पाकिस्तान का तो आप जिक्र कर रहे हैं कि वो डिवाइड क्यों हुए. पाकिस्तान जिस वक्त कायम हुआ यूनाइटेड पाकिस्तान, तो दूसरा फिर सवाल ये भी उठाइए कि बांग्लादेश और पाकिस्तान क्यों सेपरेट हुआ. देयर इज नो एंड टू द डिवीजन. अब वो खातून जो बता रहे हैं वो सही है, लेकिन पाकिस्तान के अंदर सभी 90% 95% मुसलमान हैं. तो आपका ख्याल है कि वो पीस एंड प्रॉस्पेरिटी विल बी रेजिंग? फार फ्रॉम इट. पाकिस्तान में जो मुसलमान हैं उनमें कितने फिरके हैं और उसमें भी कुछ पीस शिया और सुन्नी दिन रात की लड़ाई है, और लड़ाई नहीं ब्लड शेड है. और उसके अलावा अहमदी और चपरालवी और नूर मियां के फॉलोअर्स, ऑल दीज. तो इट इज नॉट एज सिंपल एज मालूम हिंदू मुस्लिम वर्सेस इक्वेशन.
लेकिन कॉमन प्रॉस्पेरिटी तो वहां भी नहीं अचीव हो पाई ना. मान लिया सब थे पाकिस्तान में, मेजॉरिटी ओवरवेलमिंग मुस्लिम थे, तो सारे मुसलमान अब तो हो गए, कोई हिंदू नहीं मान लिया. तो अब तो प्रॉस्पेरिटी होनी चाहिए थी सबको अक्रॉस द बोर्ड, लेकिन फिर भी उसमें भी कास्ट बेस रही या अपर और डाउन का रहा. जो अशराफ थे उन पे ज्यादा रहा, पावर उनके हाथ में रहा. सेम थिंग इंडिया में भी रहा, एक सर्टेन ग्रुप जो है डोमिनेट करता रहा. अब ये एक बड़ी चीज जो इंडिया में सबसे बड़ा चेंज आया था वो आया था वीपी सिंह के बाद, जो मंडल का मामला आया था कि ऑल दोज लोअर कास्ट जिसको ओबीसीज या शेड्यूल्ड कास्ट कहते हैं, they got empowered. That's a new reality that in India really changed India a lot. And that's why in reaction, the Hindutva came just to neutralize it. Because Hindutva is basically upper caste based. they wanted to neutralize the lower caste, and in between, of course, the minorities have to come to capitalize the electoral thing. So there is it's not an easy question answer. It's not Hindu Muslim all the time.
सर एलीट क्लास का कोई रिलीजन नहीं होता, एलीट क्लास सिर्फ एलीट क्लास होती है।
आप देखें ना, जो पसमानदा मुस्लिम थे वो आज इंडिया में बाकायदा कहते हैं कि ये जो डिवाइड किया था इंडिया पाकिस्तान, ये किसने किया था? एक भी आप देखिए 80% पॉपुलेशन मुस्लिम्स की पसमानदा है, जिसको कहते हैं नॉन अशराफ। लेकिन लीडरशिप जो मुस्लिम लीग की या जिसकी भी रही हो, वो सब के सब अशराफ थे।
अच्छा रजी भाई, मूविंग फॉरवर्ड जो हो गया है वो तो हो गया।
अरे भाई उसी की तो बात हो रही थी।
इशू तो ये है कि हाउ कैन इंडिया एंड पाकिस्तान कैन कम टुगेदर ऑन इकोनॉमिक
नहीं आप अचीव कर सकते, इकोनॉमिक नहीं कर सकते जब तक आप पीस में एक दूसरे से नहीं रहेंगे। और पीस कैसे होगी जब इश्यूज है आपके? इकोनॉमिक कैसे होगी चीज?
इश्यूज तो बनाए हुए हैं, देयर आर नो इश्यूज।
नहीं बनाए हुए हैं भाई,
नहीं
बनाए और
बिटवीन टू पार्टीज देयर आर नो।
कुछ
रियल है, कुछ बनाए कह सकते हैं आप। रियल ऐसा नहीं करेंगे
बिकॉज़ और इनको बढ़ाया गया भी है। अब देखें सर रफा साहब, हमारे जो पाकिस्तान में जो हमारी एलीट क्लास है, यानी 58 से लेकर अब तक की जो हमारी एलीट क्लास है, वो मिलिट्री रूलिंग क्लास है हमारे यहाँ की। और उनका जो इंटरेस्ट होता है वो सिर्फ इसी में होता है कि हम लोग हमेशा
वो मालूम है रम साहिबा, वो मालूम है, वो आई डिडंट, यू आर सो राइट। द क्वेश्चन इज, अगर दोनों कंट्रीज में जो है कोलैबोरेशन, इकोनॉमिक कोलैबोरेशन शुरू होगा तो ये एलिट क्लास ही को सबसे ज्यादा फायदा होगा।
कैसे होगा यार? उसका बेस तो होना चाहिए ना।
बेस तो बताते हो रहे हैं, वंस इंडिया पाकिस्तान कई बार जो है इकोनॉमिक कोलैबोरेशन ऑन डिफरेंट लेवल्स कर चुका है।
गुड टाइम में जब थोड़ा बहुत
तो वो टाइम ही की तो बात हो रही है कि व्हाई नॉट दैट टाइम विल एवर कम, वेदर द आइडियलिज्म is a long-term realism will ever happen? That is the question I am asking, and how many years it will take.
Sir, Rafat Saab, can I come in? It was beginning to happen in Manmohan Singh's tenure.
Yeah,
and this government came at a very wrong time. India was in a very perfect takeoff stage, but our plane has crash landed right at the takeoff stage. Economics हमारे political discussion के फलक्रम में आ गया था, और जैसा कि मैंने अभी आपसे कहा कि अगर इकोनॉमिक फलक्रम हमारी पॉलिटिक्स इकोनॉमिक्स पे बेस्ड होगी तो रिलीजन, कास्ट, ये जो सब कूड़ा करकट है ना, all these obsolete ideas, they will disintegrate and they will wither away.
I totally agree. I totally agree.
Like in America, nobody knows caste. Even पाकिस्तान में दबी जबान में ही कुछ हद तक ये डिस्कशन शुरू हो गया था। मैं कनाडा में था आज से 8 साल पहले, तो जब मैं पाकिस्तानी डिबेट सुनता था तो पाकिस्तान के प्रोफेसर्स ये कहते थे कि हिंदुस्तान ने कितनी तरक्की की। They used to admire Indian democracy. लेकिन एक गवर्नमेंट हिंदुस्तान में अचानक से आई जिसने हमें ये पढ़ाया कि हमें भी कट्टर होना चाहिए। We should also believe in the far right. Yeah. We should also buy the eccentricity of the Muslims. जिस तरह मुसलमानों को अपने धर्म से, मजहब से चिपकने की आदत होती है, वैसी ही आदत हिंदुओं को भी होनी चाहिए।
हो गई।
उन्होंने मैं तो कहता हूं कि इस गवर्नमेंट ने, इस निजाम ने हिंदुओं का वहाबीकरण कर दिया। Hindus have been Wahhabized by this government.
Actually, you're right, Rudranshu. जब मनमोहन सिंह की गवर्नमेंट थी एंड ये पाकिस्तानी फिल्म आर्टिस्ट्स इंडिया में आके बॉलीवुड में पार्टिसिपेट कर रहे थे, थिंग्स वर ओपनिंग अप। यूपी में एक वो बहुत बड़ी, लखनऊ में वो लगी थी आर्ट्स एंड इंडस्ट्रीज की एग्जीबिशन विद पाकिस्तानी पार्टिसिपेशन, एंड इट सीम्ड लाइक बॉर्डर्स वर ओपनिंग अप for trade. What happened?
Why everyone knows what happened.
What happened?
Because there's a military in Pakistan and government in
अरे
India.
भाई तो इंडिया की बात करें, जब इंडिया में इतनी रोजी सिचुएशन थी,
रोजी तो नहीं,
क्यों भाई,
ये
क्यों नहीं थी मनमोहन के जमाने में, जब what रुद्रांशु is saying कि we were almost taking off this and that, तो इतना कैसे, इतना सॉफ्ट बेली कैसे थी इंडिया की?
यूनिवर्सल नहीं था, लेकिन वो
सडनली वाई कांग्रेस
सर टेक ऑफ स्टेज में थे ना,
यूनिवर्सल
टेक ऑफ स्टेज में थे। यू डिड नॉट,
कांग्रेस का सारा वो क्यों नहीं कहते कि कांग्रेस का जो लॉन्ग चलते चलते जो करप्शन का दौर आया सेकंड फेज में, उसमें दे गेव ऑल दैट टू हिंदुत्व, दे वेयर टोटली ओपन टू दिस। कैसे हार गए अचानक इतना पावरफुल होने के बाद?
करप्शन तो
सबसे बड़ा नुकसान मेरा ख्याल है जो ताल्लुकात की जो खराबी है, the bitterness between the two countries is because they have stopped people to people contact. हिंदुस्तान और पाकिस्तान में जो लोग हैं, राइटर्स हैं, थिंकर्स हैं, इंटेलेक्चुअल्स हैं,
वो तो अभी भी है,
go to Pakistan, India.
आमिर भाई अभी भी है पीपल टू पीपल कांटेक्ट, बेटर है।
नहीं, वो तो अब तो होगा चंद लोगों के लिए। पर्सन कैन नॉट ट्रेवल फ्रॉम मेरी मेरी फैमिली दोनों तरफ है, माय रिलेशंस आर इन अलीगढ़ एंड कराची, and real brother and sister cannot see each other because they cannot travel. तो औरों का तो सवाल ही नहीं। तो वो जो एक relationship था कि Indian thinkers, artists were able to come to Pakistan and see that people are same, they speak the same language, they live in the same way, the dressing is the same, customs are largely similar, वो खत्म हो गया बिल्कुल। अब तो पता नहीं, मालूम होता है कि foreign country just like a country has dropped, so there's no contact left in there, there's no goodwill.
Anyway,
कांग्रेस का डाउनफॉल जो है ये बहुत बड़ा प्रॉब्लम सब कॉन्टिनेंट के लिए हुआ। कांग्रेस का जो फॉल हुआ वही एक बहुत बड़ा प्रॉब्लम। कांग्रेस अगर वीक नहीं होती और कांग्रेस का डाउनफॉल नहीं होता तो इंडिया का इस तरह से टोटल ट्रांसफॉर्मेशन और उसकी वजह से खुद पाकिस्तान पे जो इफेक्ट पड़े हैं।
जी भाई देखिए, आई हैव इश्यूज विद द पार्टीज। अगर पार्टीज मीन कांग्रेस पार्टी, बीजेपी, अगर जो है पीपल टू पीपल कॉन्टैक्ट, पीपल्स आर द सेम, और पीपल कोई भी गवर्नमेंट हो, ठीक है, वो तो पॉलिसीज तय करती है, लेकिन अगर पीपल का प्रेशर हो तो एवरीथिंग कैन हैपन। बट द प्रॉब्लम इज इन इंडिया और इन पाकिस्तान, पीपल हैव नो वॉइस and we have discussed this in
इंडिया में तो पीपल की बड़ी वॉइस हमेशा रही है।
वो हम वॉइस नहीं, कोई वॉइस नहीं है, सिर्फ वो इलेक्टोरल वो है, उसको यूज करके वो बाद में फेंक देते हैं। They don't have any voice. So in my opinion, आप
ऐसा भी नहीं है। आप लोग तो एकदम उसको, अब इवन मोदी के 8 साल बाद भी इतना चिल्लाने की वॉइस है कि जो है आप जेल में हमको डाल दो, लेकिन वॉइस तो नहीं बंद है।
वो वॉइस तो आप रेस कर सकते हैं, उसका रिजल्ट की बात हो रही है। वॉइस रेस तो कोई भी कर सकता है, डेमोक्रेसी में तो आप खड़े होकर चिल्ला सकते हैं।
कांग्रेस डिडंट डिलीवर मेनी थिंग्स एंड इट विल हैपन, पीपल चेंज द गवर्नमेंट इन इंडिया।
कांग्रेस रजी भाई, द गवर्नमेंट इज द पीपल। कोई सी भी आप उसको नाम दे दें, लोग गवर्नमेंट बनाते हैं। जैसी गवर्नमेंट है, It doesn't matter कि वो कांग्रेस में भी वही लोग थे और बीजेपी में भी वही लोग हैं। नहीं मतलब पॉलिटिशियंस की बात नहीं हो रही,
कांग्रेस बीजेपी में कोई कॉमन
पॉलिटिशियन की बात नहीं हो रही। यही लोग जो कांग्रेस को वोट देते आते थे आज बीजेपी को दे रहे हैं, तो लोग तो वही हैं, ये मैं कह रहा हूँ।
रजी, इंडिया से हटके एक सवाल मैं पूछता हूँ, I mean all learned people here, at least whatever left, 8 or 7, कभी ह्यूमन हिस्ट्री में आपको कोई मिसाल मिलती है जबकि दूध और शहद की नहरें बहती हों, पीस एंड एमिनिटी ऑल प्रिवेलिंग, ऐसा कोई जमाना है जिसको कि हम वी कैन फॉलो एंड इमिटेट?
नहीं, कोई जमाना नहीं, कोई नहीं। किसी भी जमाने में, इवन जो आइडियलिस्टिक जमाना हमारा था जिसमें मॉरलिटी की इतनी बात थी,
हमारा व्हाट डू यू मीन हमारा बनी से?
अरे मतलब जब आपका इवन प्रॉफिट के जमाने में
और मुसलमानों का यू मीन
जमाने में, गरीबी में भी कभी ये नहीं था कि सारे सहाबी जो हैं बड़े नेक और बड़े अच्छे थे। अक्सर झगड़ा होता था, अक्सर एक दूसरे के लिए वो भी बचाव करते थे, खुद प्रॉफिट। तो ये सब हम लोग के यहाँ जो एक ब्लाइंडली कहने की बातें हैं कि बड़ा जमाना कभी गोल्डन था, कभी ये तक, कभी नहीं था। ह्यूमन हिस्ट्री में कोई जमाना कहीं भी बहुत गोल्डन कभी नहीं था। देयर वर ऑलवेज कॉन्फ्लिक्ट्स देयर वर ऑलवेज कंट्राडिक्शंस, और मॉरलिटी का कोई जजमेंटल, अब जैसे ड्रीम की बात आई, अगर ड्रीम आप देखिए तो जैसे नेहरू थे, नेहरू ने जो जो विजन किया था ड्रीम का सब पूरा किया था अपनी लाइफ टाइम। लेकिन इंडिया का हाल, अभी ये कह सकते हैं कि इंडिया के सारे इंस्टीट्यूशन जो इंटैक्ट अभी भी रहे वो सब नेहरू की वजह से। सारे विजन नेहरू ने अपने ड्रीम के दे दिए इन प्रैक्टिस और इंडिया को बना दिया, नो डाउट अबाउट। लेकिन उसके बाद उसको एक एक करके जो हंगामा कर रहे हैं वो उसको तोड़ने की कोशिश कर रहे हैं। नॉनदलेस उनका विजन था जिन्होंने उस ड्रीम को पूरा किया, बट रियल रियलिटीज में नेहरू भी अचीव नहीं करा पाए कि सारे गरीब ठीक हो जाए। गरीबी उसी तरह रही, उसी तरह जात पात रही, उसी तरह अपर एलिट रहा। और ये भी बता दें, मुस्लिम की अपर एलिट आज भी इंडिया में उसी तरह से फ्लोरिश कर रही है, जितनी भी है वो उसी तरह compete करते हैं, उनके बच्चे उसी तरह एम्प्लॉयड हैं, उसी तरह कार में चल रहे हैं, उसी तरह वो जो है इंजीनियर बन रहे हैं, डॉक्टर बन रहे हैं या जर्नलिस्ट बन रहे हैं। ऐसा नहीं है, खाली उनकी परसेंटेज कम है। आप जाके तलाश कीजिए, ये सारे लोग जो बड़ा कमेंट करते हैं, आप उनके घरों में देखिए कोई अनएम्प्लॉयड नहीं है। उनके सारे भतीजे जो हैं बहुत अच्छी जॉब में, सारी भतीजियां पढ़ रही हैं, सारे लोगों के घरों के बाद जो है फ्लैट जो है 50-50 लाख का दिल्ली में रखा हुआ है। तो ऐसा नहीं है क्या कि मासेस ऑलवेज सफर, मासेस सफर, चाहे वो हिंदू मास हो, चाहे वो मुस्लिम मास हो, चाहे वो पाकिस्तान हो, चाहे इंडिया हो, मासेस सफर। और दे टेल कि आप लोग हमेशा जो है ना चिल्लाते हो, लीडरशिप की बात करते हो, अंग्रेजी में आर्टिकल लिखते हो, वी आर द वन हु सफर एट योर एक्सपेंस।
तो वही आखिर में तो बात वही इकोनॉमिक,
ये रियलिटी है,
इकोनॉमिक
मैं कह रही
डिस्पैरिटी
थी
की
सर।
आ गई ना।
और ये रियलिटी इवन यूके में है, यूरोप में है। आप साउथ नॉर्थ का डिवाइड देखिए, जो वर्किंग क्लास है उसके मुकाबले देखिए, खुद अमेरिका में देखिए, आप चले जाइए, ये पूरा जो बेल्ट है आपकी एपलेशियन माउंटेन की, गरीबी की इंतहा है। और जो आप इमेजिन नहीं कर सकते, सेम वाइट जो कायदे से खा भी नहीं सकते। मैं कहते हैं ना कि जब रॉबर्ट कैनेडी पहुंचा एपलेशियन के अंदर, तो उसने आज तक पॉवर्टी का वो लेवल उसी अमेरिका में देखा नहीं था। he was shocked to see these white kids, जिसको ना कभी टूथपेस्ट मिलता था, न उसके घर में कोई चीज थी, he couldn't just take it. वो ब्लैक की बात नहीं छोड़ी।
A lot of it is related to America. I think we can say it's not same abject poverty as another country.
Abject poverty.
Going back, अगर मैं आपको remind करूं कि if you believe in the biblical stories, when Adam was came to the earth, the first thing happened to the two child, Abel and Cain, Habil and Qabil, they start fighting and killing each other. So how far can you go beyond? So if you believe, yeah.
जब हम लोग उसमें चले जाते हैं तो फिर ये है ना कि आप एक वो दूध की नदियां और सारी चीजें सामने आएंगी। और पता नहीं क्यों हूरों का मामला रहता है, तो गुलमाओं की बात नहीं होती। ये मसला है।
तो रजी भाई, आज का सारांश ये है, सब कुछ होने के बावजूद, कि कोई फॉर्मूला जो है नहीं निकला।
देखिए फार्मूला तो,
क्योंकि it's a very huge topic.
Tell you very truthfully.
This was more like an intellectual talk.
लेकिन रफत यही तो मसला है कि we expected or we expect from our diplomats not to become professors. डिप्लोमेट में ये होता है कि प्रिस्क्रिप्शन स्पेसिफिक और क्लियर होता है, क्लैरिटी के साथ। बिकॉज सिविल सर्विसेज में ये बताया जाता है कि आपको रूल्स दिस एंड दैट। ये प्रोफेसर्स होते हैं, इंटेलेक्चुअल्स होते हैं जो फिलोसोफाइज करते हैं। तो इशरत भाई ने किया ये कि कोई भी क्वेश्चन आप उनसे पूछिए, आप देखिए कि उसका जवाब, अब जैसे सत्यनाथ चौधरी ने कहा कि इंडिया पाकिस्तान में कैसे सॉल्यूशन आप बेस करेंगे, he just didn't talk about at all.
Razi bhai, that is intentional because diplomats are.
He's not Indian diplomat anymore. He was.
No, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
He's supposed to give a lecture. He's supposed to give a prescription.
I know, but you remember एक क्वेश्चन हमने पिछली बार भी पूछा था, G20 की प्रेसिडेंसी में अब इंडिया का क्या रोल होगा, and he said no, I don't want to talk about that.
Who?
अब छोड़िए, जाने दी।
देखिए देखिए if the speaker is a professor, if a speaker is a journalist, if he is an activist, जो आप पूछेंगे he will very openly tell you whatever.
No, he's a hardcore diplomat. You cannot talk a journalist, yeah, जो है.
Right.
So he talks in that line.
But Rafat, he is no more a employee of a
It doesn't
foreign service.
matter. It doesn't matter. I am thinking exactly the same thing. Why doesn't he open up? Because the reason is probably because they are taught throughout their life that you have to abide some rules even after retirement, and probably he's sticking to that. That's my analysis. I'm not saying it could be true, it could be wrong, but I'm saying anyway.
Maybe.
Thank you everyone. It was a great discussion. Satynath Saab, thank you, and thank you everyone.
All right. Thank you. Bye. Khuda Hafiz. Namaste.
थैंक यू रफत साहब, आपने मेरा सजेशन देखा